And then we'll go to Mumbai as well. From BSC studio, we have Mr. Avinnash Gorakssakar. Mr. Gorakssakar, talking about stocks itself, if we look at the crisis, the most important situation what we are observing currently is the Greece crisis and the complete Eurozone space. There are certain companies which have their own exposure to the Eurozone, and they have much investments also from there. And how do you look at the complete stocks of these companies which have the exposure to the Eurozone? The current existing investors, should they have to stay back and then wait and watch, or should they have to pull down and then invest somewhere else?
No, I think, Venkat, you mentioned rightly, there are some companies which have got a very large exposure to Europe, and the European markets are now looking very closely at the Greece developments. As I said earlier, if Greece does not remain part of the Eurozone, it could put significant pressure on the euro, and the dollar would strengthen. So in that sense, companies like Bharat Forge or maybe a Motherson Sumi, typically something like a HCL Tech or Tech Mahindra, these are typical companies which generate a large percentage of their revenues from Europe. So in the short term, there could be some pressure on the prices. I think existing investors should hold on, because all these businesses, these companies have actually got strong business models. In the short term, maybe for a couple of quarters, the margin pressures would continue purely from the currency side. But longer term, I think, all these things would get neutralized. I think clearly Europe is an area which is going to grow. Maybe in the short term, there could be some margin pressure for all the stocks I mentioned.
Well, Mr. Gorakssakar, now talking about the Eurozone space itself, I just want you to lay some focus on the economic perspective of the Eurozone. If, say, for example, let's take a hypothetical situation, let's get into that. If Greece exits, the credibility of Eurozone is once again at a stake, because there are many other economies like Italy, Portugal, Spain actually on the verge of a default. Eurozone completely will be in a dangerous platform. What impact will it have on the global perspective, the complete status quo of the Eurozone?
No, I think, as you rightly mentioned, I think if Greece exits the Eurozone, it's going to be a big short-term setback for Europe, because clearly not only does it mean large amount of financial losses for the European banks, but clearly I think, that could possibly make other countries like Spain, Portugal, these are also countries which have actually gone into default category, and possibly, there could be concerns that possibly if these countries also don't form part of the Eurozone, then the kind of financial commitments which ECB has given to these countries would be at stake. So I think in the short term it's going to be volatile, Venkat, and clearly if Greece exits Eurozone, I think you could see some more pain ahead.
Okay, and Mr. Mittal, talking about the same Greece